Jalen Carter, Nolan Smith, Jordan Davis, Nakobe Dean, Keely Ringo, Lewis Seen. Zach, are the Eagles going to add another Georgia defender? Is Mykel Williams a possibility?
If Mykel Williams is a possibility at number 32, then definitely the Eagles will add another Georgia defender because he fits so much of what the Eagles seek. There's a proof of concept there from the college perspective, but also the translation from the Georgia scheme to the Eagles scheme. I think there's people in the building who can vouch for him, and we'll get into it. But what jumps out to me is it's a high floor because of how he can help against the run game, but then the ceiling is awfully high as well.
All right, let's find out what Fran Duffy, our All-City draft analyst, finds out about Mykel Williams, and then we're going to be here to talk about it on the other side.
All right, time to talk about Georgia pass rusher Mykel Williams, a former five-star recruit. He was a top 10 player in the country, regardless of position, coming out of high school. Ends up at the University of Georgia, and he made an impact right away. You saw him on one of the best defenses in college football, and he was a part of that rotation from Jump Street. He looks the part. I remember talking with former Georgia pass rusher Nolan Smith, now here in Philadelphia with the Eagles, and he said this guy is a spitting image of Trayvon Walker. Walker just went number 1 in the draft. Williams is the guy to watch down the line. Now, with Mykel Williams, like a lot of these other Georgia players, the production was not always there, and that is part of the profile, something that you have to consider. The pass rush win rates, the pressure rates, never really eye-popping, never had more than 5 sacks in a season, but always had at least 4.5. So he was always a contributing factor with the pass rush, fought through an ankle injury for the large majority of this season. That certainly had an impact, but I think when you're looking at Mykel Williams, one thing to keep in mind, before we get into the positives and negatives, you talk about that Georgia scheme and what they ask their guys to do. So much of his time was spent snug to the formation, close to the tackle, a 4-eye technique where he's on the outside shade, head up over the tackle, or even kicked inside a little bit further where he's between the tackle and the guard. He didn't spend a ton of time lined up wide outside. And not only that, he was also used so much. They do so much slanting and stunting, contain rushes where they're trying to open up things for linebackers and DBs blitzing through the middle or off the edge. And so that's going to impact all of those edge rushers and their ability to consistently get after the quarterback. But this guy has all of the tools. Let's get into the positives. And to me, it starts with that length because you're talking about prototype type of size here and prototype wingspan for Mykel Williams. He's got over 34-inch arms. He looks the part. The game, to me, and that's where he made the biggest strides going from 2023 to 2024, he leans into that length. I thought in 2023 as a sophomore, it was a little bit too finesse. He was trying to win high side. It didn't always look like he was always going to try and had a fully fleshed pass rush plan. Watching him this year as a junior, even fighting through that ankle injury, you saw that this is a guy that knew where his bread was buttered as a rusher. So it all started with that length. He would use the long arm, he would use the bull rush, and he did a nice job of setting that up and then using that bull rush to set up other moves. He had a huge sack late in the game in October against Texas where he kind of faked like he was going to go inside with a bull rush, threw a little Euro step, and then dipped the corner against Kelvin Banks, who is going to be a likely first-round pick, the left tackle from Texas. So when you're looking at Mykel Williams, I think the arrow is continuing to point up. You're talking about a guy who's an outstanding athlete. He looks like a small forward. He moves like a basketball small forward. This is a guy that's got outstanding movement, a little bit stiff at 6'5", 260, turning the corner, but at that size, moves really well. He can close in a blur, and you love his ability again, to lead with his hands and utilize that length. And that's something that stands out, not just as a rusher where the arrow is still pointing up, but as a run defender as well. Really good flashes of holding the point of attack, getting off blocks, some stack and shed ability there off the edge. Now, this year, because of the ankle injury, he didn't play a ton on run downs. That was one thing that did stand out to me. They used him more of a specialty type of player this year. He did get starts. It's not like he didn't play on any run downs, but I think they wanted to kind of save him up a little bit just because of that ankle. That said, watching him in years past, this is a guy that can hold up against the run very well. He's really strong. He uses that length. He can lock out and control blocks from start to finish, and he's always been a really good tackler as well. So I think when you're looking at the pro shows he's got the power, he's got the strength, he's got the movement to show that that improvement from a technique standpoint this year. That was really big for me. As far as a con standpoint, I mentioned the ankle injury suffered in week 1 against Clemson last fall. It caused him to miss a couple games, and then he was a little bit slow getting back, but he eventually did get back. You could see that it was still impacting him, but I appreciate the grit to kind of fight through that and show, hey, you know what? Yeah, I'm not going to mail it in here. I want to try and help this team out and see if we can get into the college football playoff. From a pass rush standpoint, the one area where he can improve, snap anticipation. He was sometimes the last guy off the ball, and that's a reaction quickness thing. That's not even, to me, that's not even the ankle injury. That's more just making sure that you're wired into the snap count, get off the ball. This is a guy that didn't have a ton of quick pressures. A quick pressure meaning under 2.5 seconds. His quick pressure rate a little bit lower than you'd like to see for a top flight pass rusher off the edge. But again, when you're looking at the skill set and the usage, I think that might have had something to do with it as well. The other area where I'd like to see him get a little bit better, overall, just his pad level. He's a 6'5" pass rusher, so playing with proper leverage at all times, that's something that he's going to have to continue to work through. Played a little bit high, can get bumped off his path as a rusher, and then would get in trouble in the run game, just playing a little bit high. But outside of that, that's something that you can correct. Aside from that, I think that there was a lot to like there. At the end of the day, after Abdul Carter from Penn State, who's going to be a top 5 pick in this draft, Mykel Williams is the guy that I've got the most faith in to be able to hit his ceiling and be an impact rusher off the edge in this class. When you talk about the tools, the length, the quickness, the power, the strength, the effort, he's got some outstanding flash plays in terms of chasing plays from the backside with his pursuit. The flashes are all there. I think there's enough that you can bet on him making that ascension to become that level of rusher. Kind of reminds me a little bit of Josh Sweat. When Josh Sweat was coming out of Florida State a few years ago, Sweat had this, he was a big-time recruit with outstanding length and physical tools, but like Mykel Williams, was often used tight to the formation by Florida State, so you didn't always get to see him just kind of pin his ears back and go with the runway. I look at Williams in the same vein. Now, Sweat fell because he had a knee injury that caused him to fall to round 4 in the draft, and he ended up becoming a really good player. Williams is not going to have that kind of a fall, but I still think that that's the type of player you could see here in the NFL. He's got the ability to be an impact rusher, a solid number 1 or a great number 2. I look at Williams as one of the top rushers in this class.
You can sense the love in Fran's analysis there. The guy has fallen for Mykel Williams, and then he throws the Josh Sweat comp on. You must have fallen yourself.
I don't blame Fran for thinking that way. Mykel Williams has so much.
Not your Kel, not our Kel, Mykel.
He has so much of what you seek. The only thing that's missing is the prolific production. That said, it's a conversation we've had in the past about multiple Georgia defenders, and Fran outlined it well there, playing within the scheme. Like, Georgia doesn't really produce these 10-sack, 12-sack players. It's just not what they ask their guys to do.
Very egalitarian.
I suppose you can say that.
Yeah. Communist, you could argue.
But he is, like, first off, the frame jumps out, the pedigree jumps out, the playing toughness, the competitive spirit that jumps out. You made a really good point. You can see this on our feed.
Thank you very much.
On YouTube. Make sure we're talking about all these prospects. When we talked about James Pierce Jr., one thing you said was that you're not sure Vic Fangio would get behind the pick. Mykel Williams is a guy who I think the coaching staff would get behind in addition to the scouting staff, because it's not hard to see him having just a strong role. If his floor is he's a player who is helping you in the run game and has some juice in the passing game, that's a fine floor. But I think you can take what's already there and then add to that potential ceiling with the athletic traits, the age profile, as I said, top recruit pedigree. Man, it would surprise me if he's there at 32. I know there's some injury stuff there, but if he's somehow there, or even if he slips into the mid-20s and you do a slight trade up, Williams is a guy who would make a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I'm going to tell you a secret in a minute, but first let me just let you know that you should like and subscribe to the channel, like the video. Check out Fran Duffy's analysis on allphly.com. Become a diehard. You get his scouting reports on every player that you need to know in this draft. And there's also an Eagles-specific version, the Eagles 100. We've got the PHLY Eagles show every day at 2 o'clock. But here's the secret. I think we've wasted 8 minutes of your time, because Mykel Williams is not going to be there for the Eagles at 32. Unfortunately, we hope you had a good time. Maybe Mykel Williams will be
That's a good point.
Available for you in a trade in like 5 years, and we can circle back to this. But he ain't going to be there.
Well,
Go ahead. That was supposed to be the close, but go ahead.
If I can just poke fun at myself here.
Yeah.
There was a time when we were talking about Nolan Smith with the number 10 overall pick.
Sure.
And you would have said he's not going to be there at 31. All kinds of things can happen. That's a strong close, but man, a special player.
Speaking of strong close, everybody, Zach Berman.